Today's episode is with Barry Blanchard. Barry is a legend in all regards. He has too many accolades to list them all, but he's one of the world's leading alpinists. He's an author, a speaker, a mountain guide with decades worth of experience operating at the highest level within the mountains. Most importantly, he's a loving father. And yeah, it was a privilege to sit down with Barry today, and a massive thank you to my friend Andy, our mutual friend Andy, who was able to set this up for us. Also, for those of you watching this, a quick note, I got a new camera, which is very exciting. But unfortunately, in the setup with my new camera, I made two rookie mistakes. First mistake was that I set Barry and I next to a very large window. And the second one was that I didn't lock the exposure on the camera. That being said, the lighting does shift throughout the video. And so because of this, and with the mantra of when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, I have decided to go with a different aesthetic than normal to this video. It'll be pretty clear once you start to watch it. Now on to the episode. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you giving me your time. I was obviously...
No worries.
Our mutual friend Andy kind of got us in contact, but I don't know, I might have a confession to make straight off the bat here. So I was at the Night of Lies last year.
Yeah.
The most recent one. And when you were up, so you probably imagine you must get this quite a lot. I have obviously heard of you. I've never met you. This is the first time I've met you. But I've obviously, from living in this area, being in the outdoors, you hear of Barry Blanchard, i.e. you. Mm-hmm. So I'd heard of you, but I'd never met you. I'd never actually even Googled you, so I didn't know what you looked like. So when we were at the Night of Lies and, people are doing their various videos and presentations, and you got up to do your presentation, which was all to do with this, significant impact, also volume of injuries that you've had. Truth be told, was like, this fucking guy doesn't sound like he knows what he's doing. Because I didn't know who you were. So I was just listening to someone going on about these injuries, and I was like, I don't think he should be doing this. And obviously, afterwards, I don't know how, I think your picture popped up and it instantly clicked, and I was like, yeah, no wonder you've got so many injuries. You've had such a, had such a background in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Andy was telling me you've got a Métis background as well.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So you're not from here originally. You're from Saskatchewan.
No, I was born in Calgary.
Okay.
And then my mom is she was born on a homestead in the Qu'Appelle Valley of southern Saskatchewan, which is like the Grand Coulee of southern Saskatchewan. And it's quite a beautiful place because where she grew up until after the war.
If it's okay, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to bump this just onto your pocket if that's okay with you. Sorry.
Yeah, fine by me.
Sorry, apologies.
No worries. Yeah, it's Saskatchewan, the middle of Saskatchewan, so it's absolutely as flat as a plate. It's like this surface here.
Yeah. And
then you come to the Qu'Appelle River Valley, and it's a French name that means who is calling. And there's all of a sudden 300 feet of relief, and there's ski areas there. That's where a lot of my cousins learned to ski at Fort Qu'Appelle. And there's huge Métis and Indigenous history there. You go down into this 300 feet of relief, and suddenly there's trees and gullies, and one of my ancestors had a still there. Yeah. And, that my ancestors used to, fish there and take, stuff out of the lake to feed the family. And, we were there for, I think 3 generations, and largely the Métis. And there was, at Fort Qu'Appelle, there was a Hudson's Bay, fort. And after, the Riel Rebellion of 1885, a lot of the Métis were, kind of persecuted by Canadians because, there was this uprising, and Louis Riel got hung for treason, actually, which is, as an Indigenous Métis, we have a different, kind of feeling about John A. Macdonald.
Yeah.
Drunken Irishman. Not an Irishman, Scotsman.
Yeah.
Our family history is Scottish.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So where?
my most well-known Métis ancestor, I'm 7 generations removed from Cuthbert Grant.
Okay.
Who led the Métis at the Battle of Seven Oaks, which is now, and there's a monument and everything in what is now modern day Winnipeg, but used to be the Red River. And Cuthbert was the captain of the buffalo hunt for the Métis, and that's the way the Métis made their living. They would go out twice to harvest buffalo, and around the times when the buffalo in North America were between 40 and 60 million individuals. So the largest herd of ungulates ever walked the face of the earth. And they got slaughtered to within, as a native guy in Montana who actually was able to get a hold of a couple thousand buffalo or bison and, he had a place that he could put a fence around him because, colonists used to shoot him from the train, as shooting practice and just leave the animal, rotting on the ground, which the indigenous and the Métis never did. So what the Métis did was they would go on the buffalo hunt and harvest, as many buffalo as they could, and they would pound it with prairie berries to make pemmican. And pemmican was the fuel source for the voyageurs, who were largely French-Canadian, rowing these massive canoes across Canada. And, a lot of those voyageurs, they would often die of hernia, which was a herniation, because they carry 2 piece on a tump line when they were portaging, and a piece was 90 pounds. So they would have, close to 200 pounds on a tump line, and a lot of them died of la hernie. But Cuthbert, he was also a warden of the plains, and he got killed in his 50s. He got kicked by a horse in Grantstown, named after him. But his brother went to Grant's College in Scotland, and his chaperone when he was there, because a lot of the Métis our culture was born out of fur trading men and their winter brides. And, in Cuthbert's case, his father, stayed, and, his indigenous mom, they became, a man and wife for kind of life. But when he was in Grant's College, his brother was in Grant's College, and this would have been in the, very early 1800s. So in the late, even 1700s into the 1800s, one of the McGillivray brothers was his chaperone. And Mount McGillivray, that's just right over there, is named after the McGillivray brothers. And up here, the mountain that we call Cascade, that the Stoney Nakoda call the mountain where water falls, and also refer to it as a welcoming mountain because it welcomes you as you come up the Bow Valley. Another Métis buddy, who's also a mountain guide and married to a mountain guide, lives in Banff, Joe McKay. He put up 4 routes, one of which is called the Battle of Seven Oaks. Then one's called Keeping It Real since 1885. One's called Batoche, which was the big battle at that point in time between the Métis and basically Riel and the Métis against the Canadian forces that were sent to Batoche, Saskatchewan, to try to eliminate this uprising. And his general was Gabriel Dumont. And Gabriel Dumont survived the Riel Rebellion and lived to, an old age in Saskatchewan. And John Diefenbaker sat on his knee as a young kid and heard stories from Gabriel Dumont. So, it's an interesting
deep history
lineage.
Yeah.
And the other, the Riel Rebellion, that's one of the other ones that Joe put up there, 4 of them. And just after my oldest daughter graduated, we went and climbed one of the routes there that is called Minahapa, which means the mountain where water falls. And it's really cool because you do a couple pitches and you actually cross the waterfall. And, I've climbed the waterfall hundreds of times as an ice climber, which a lot of the Stony Elders think is disrespectful. So at some point, we'll have to have a conversation and stuff with Stony Elders, because they believe that the voices you hear on that waterfall are both the female and male ancestors. So, as you cross that waterfall, I was telling my daughter, this is the voices of, Dakota ancestors.
Wow.
So, yeah. And then pointing out to her the Battle of Seven Oaks route, and just sharing a lot of that stuff with her.
Yeah, when I was listening to, again, some of the other podcasts you've been on, it sounds like it obviously has had an influence on you. Excuse me. And am I right in saying it sounds like you are quite spiritual then? Is that part of the Métis identity, like that kind of spiritual nature?
Well, yeah, and the spirituality that I have is one I'm learning about, because, the Métis, our spirituality is Roman Catholicism. That's, Métis culture. My mom and her siblings went to church in, Saskatchewan. And especially after like the Second World War, my grandfather survived Dieppe, which is just a miracle as a Canadian, because so many Canadians' lives were lost at Dieppe in 1942. And it was like, they finally released a lot of the war documentation, because it was kept in British vaults for 75 years. And they've released it in the last little bit. So there's all this new information, and there's a good historian who's done a really good film about Dieppe and what was really going on in Dieppe. So a lot of us were educated that it was a failed beach landing, an attempt beach landing that proved to be incremental in the successful days when the big landings happened. But this historian points out, and having even gone to, the building that has changed hands, it was a hotel, it was a restaurant, all this stuff, and finding this one place where there's 4 German communication guys, what they're after was the Enigma machine. And that's what they were trying to get, because they needed to crack the Enigma code. And even Churchill said he wasn't worried about the air or the land. He was worried about the submarines. So to get that Enigma code, and then, the history of the Enigma machine is, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you seen the movie?
Yeah. No, that was a really good movie. And
it was,
really good representation of, how, after the war, this guy who was a gay mathematician who, was one of the significant, if you probably line up 10 people who were, made us win the Second World War. You'd definitely have Churchill, but you'd probably have that mathematician too, because he cracked the Enigma machine. So yeah, they suddenly knew what the Germans were communicating about. And interestingly, the Americans, they used, another gentleman I know and have met is Len Nessifer, who is, he's from Arizona, and all of the really famous monuments there, they're all on Navajo land. So the Americans they call them wind talkers. They spoke in Navajo, and it's such a strange and remote dialect that I don't think the Germans really knew what they were listening to. So yeah, there were wind speakers. So yeah. And then the history of the Second World War. I mean, you could fill this room with thousands of volumes of, just Churchill.
I thought with that movie, it was also crazy how, like, what happened to him in the end of it, how they obviously, I think they chemically castrated him because he was gay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking there, as you say, like someone who was so pivotal.
Yeah.
And that war, and the way he kind of gets treated at the end of it is kind of inhumane almost.
Yeah.
So would you say that you were saying that it's more now that you're kind of getting into your history. Did you find that when you were like younger and doing like a lot of the climbs that you've obviously went on to do, did your background and the spirituality not have that much of an influence then on how you kind of perceived the mountains at that point? Was it something that you tapped into later on?
Well, my own involvement with church was with the United Church of Canada because, one of my scoutmasters, who was involved in the scouting, but, kind of took me under his wing. And, part of, that was, going to church sometimes, the United Church of Canada. And he actually eventually became, he was a churchman initially, but he became reverend. What do we call those church people?
Priest?
No, he wasn't a priest. That would be Catholicism. He was in the United Church. He became it'll come to me. But initially, in my own life, and it's great to go back to Saskatchewan and hear more stories. And I was fortunate to hear some of the stories from my grandfather and my grandmother, Napoleon and Josephine Amiot and Pelche. Napoleon Amiot and Josephine Pelche, who actually never ever got married, but had, 7 kids together, one of whom was my mom. To hear their stories and hear the story about how, because my grandfather was caught in bed with a woman at a young point in time, and his father, who was also a Napoleon Amiot, he and his wife, kind of forced that they just said, that's it, you got to get married. And there was no children from that coupling, but my grandfather did get married. He never ever got divorced. And my great-great-grandfather on the Amiot side, so my grandfather's father, they were road allowance people. So after the Riel Rebellion, some of the only land available to the Métis was beside the roads, where there's culverts and stuff. And then there's farmland. The farmland's owned, the road's owned, but in between was the road allowance. And that's where a lot of Métis, and there's still a road allowance, kind of the remnants of the settlement right above Lebret, where my grandfather was born and raised. And I'd see the pictures. I mean, you're talking about a sod house, so it's, And not that a lot of people on the planet didn't live that way in the 16 and 1700s. But, this is well into the 1900s in Canada. The story from my grandmother was, she went to church one day with, probably my mom as a little kid, going to be a good Catholic, and the priest said to her that she didn't own those children. Those children belonged to my grandfather's wife, and she had to give those children to my grandfather's wife. And my grandmother, Josephine, just said, "Screw you, you old bastard." She walked out and she never went back.
Wow.
That was it.
And is that because she was Métis? He didn't, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was, Catholicism. Like, he's telling my grandmother that her children don't belong to her. They belong to this other woman. Because my grandfather was married to this other woman.
Right.
So, it didn't work out well for the Catholic Church at that point with my grandmother anyway. So I think my grandfather kept taking my mom and some of the siblings to church, but my grandmother never went back.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy the amount of control that they either had or thought that they had at that point in time, where they could just tell people, like, your kids aren't your own, give them to...
Yeah. And so much of the world, they still have that much control, and the amount of wealth that exists in the Roman Catholic Church just from land,
It's crazy.
Global land acquisition.
I know.
But anyways, my own spirituality early on in my climbing, I would get in over my head, even on Mount Yamnuska, which is, we know it as Yamnuska, but the Stoney Nakoda name for the mountain is, I still don't pronounce it right, Yamnuska, and I'm working on it. And I'm working on my indigenous spirituality. But yeah, early on, when I was 17. Me and my buddy went up on the Calgary route, and we were up there for over a day, over 24 hours on this route. And, it's, there's 4 rope lengths of squeeze chimneys at the top. And my buddy just couldn't squeeze chimney. And for whatever reason, probably me learning to chimney on the Robin Hood grain mill right beside the CPR in central Calgary. We used to chimney up there to get pigeons and bring down pigeons because, we had me and my buddies, one buddy actually had a pigeon coop and did pigeon racing and, all kind of pigeon stuff. So we'd go get pigeons. And I remember getting one and putting it inside my shirt with my Levi's jacket over top and chimneying back down. And my other buddies didn't want to chimney up there, but I would do it, right? And get to these, they're like windowsills in this granary, and there's pigeons nesting and doing stuff there and raising their young. So we grab one of their young and come down. But yeah, my buddy Gray, we both worked at Sport Check, and I was just getting into climbing. Finally being able to get out in the mountains and go climbing after, reading a bunch about it, learning a bunch in the city, and even, practicing aid climbing across the rafters in a townhouse that we lived in, going, stringer to stringer, putting on aid equipment and going across and rappelling out of the second story or the second story window with a dog chain on a dog chain because I learned how to rappel at cats. So, but, yeah. Gray, he just couldn't do these squeeze chimneys. And, I got my knees beat up because it's a lot of pressure on the knees. And, we're going into the night, and the only thing he can figure to do is we have 2 ropes. So I, belay him, and he stands on one rope while he ties a loop in the other, and then steps into it. So 4 pitches of that. So I got bruises around my hips, and finally at the top in the dark, I'm hallucinating, and we come down and, we can't see it. We don't have headlamps, and, we're coming down Yamnuska in the dark, and we finally get to the road, beside, where we had our car at my uncle's, this exotic, station wagon from the 50s that he'd lent me so me and my buddy Greg could go climbing. But, my mom, it was the first time that I was overdue. So anyone with a hat got a call. So the police, the RCMP, the national parks, if a pilot had a hat, got called a Dickie D man. Yeah, she called everybody because her eldest was not showing up. So the police were there, and they were storming up and down like they had a loudspeaker, and they're saying our names, and we could hear it for probably, an hour before we even got to the road. And I remember we came through the ditch and we stumbled on the road, and the cruiser came up, and the 2 cops got out, and they were pissed. You guys are in all kinds of trouble. And Don Forrest was part of the Calgary Mountain Rescue Team, as was John Laughlin. And Don Forrest and his daughter Sylvia, is a longtime friend. And I knew Don too. Don's passed on now. But Sylvia is the past president of our Guides Association, actually. She's the previous president of our Guides Association. And her dad, Don, he just elbowed them out of the way. These cops, he just pushed, got in and said, "You boys okay? Do you need water?" And he just put all his attention on us and paid, the cops got pushed away some way, which, if you're RCMP, I don't think you're used to having that happen. But the whole, dozen members of the Calgary Mountain Club Rescue or the Calgary Rescue Team are there trying to help us out. And actually one was John Laughlin, who was a real hero of mine even then. And I think John was about 7 years older than me. And, And
when all that was like, when you were younger, like, and, you know, you're chimneying up to get the pigeons and stuff like that, did you have any idea or like a plan that your career would pan out the way it did? Or did the pieces just kind of fall into place as you went along?
Yeah, it, was a calling. You know, there weren't really a lot of, strong male models, when I grew up. And, you know, my father, you know, he tried, but, you know, I think, and my father's passed on now, but cumulatively in my life, I maybe spent a couple months in my, you know, after being an infant, because my father was around for the first 3 years, of my life, and, you know, a little bit of my, younger sister's life. And then he and my mom, you know, divorced and split up. And, yeah, he tried, but, you know, I have a half sister, who I dearly love. And, you know, he had that, you know, family to tend to, or, you know, that's where most of his energy went and his time. And, yeah, I didn't get a lot of time with my father. So, yeah. But, yeah, it was a calling because, you know, even as a, you know, as getting to be into my teens or my, I don't know, before you become a teenager, I was exposed to some, my mom knew some rodeo cowboys, and, you know, that's the word that they use. It was a calling that, you get your calling. And my calling, was climbing. And I kind of knew that from an early age, you know, like even as just a tyke, you kind of, as a male, you know, you're either going to be a race car driver, a mountain climber, or an astronaut. Those are kind of like the 3 templates. Yeah. And race car driver, one of my buddies tried. He did, you know, and I know some race car drivers, but yeah, that wasn't in the cards for me, and neither was being an astronaut. So climbing, you know, and growing up in Calgary, I could see the Rockies on the western horizon. I didn't get a chance to go there outside of, you know, as a teenager with my buddy and his family driving out into the mountains and maybe going up, you know, Tunnel Mountain, which is actually should be called Sleeping Buffalo Mountain. Yeah. So it should be renamed. You know, running down the trail and stuff. That was the most mountain stuff. But I always wanted to be a climber, even before I knew what being a climber really meant. And then, in high school, you know, I just read everything in my high school, junior high school library, anything to do with climbing. And some of the books are, you know, really good, and some are very instructive, like Royal Robbins' Basic Rockcraft. That's how I learned basically to aid climb across the stringers in the condo, or, you know, the townhouse. That's where we lived. It was a townhouse. But religiously back to Gray, you know, at that time in my life, you know, that wasn't the first time, you know, that I was overdue and my mom had to call everyone with a Hass. Yeah, I started, you know, I would pray. I would ask God for some, you know, and it was always the same, just get me off of this. And I promise I will never come back up here again. And then after, you know, half a dozen times of that line of, prayer, I realized that, okay, God isn't listening anymore. He knows that I'm just going to come back up here. Yeah. So I quit, you know, praying to God. Although, no, it's interesting, you know, prayer still does come out, but it's now, with my own, belief system, it's to the Creator. And it's, the Creator is, kind of like a force. Not so much an individual. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you get to think of it as a universe if you want. Cause, we all try to figure out why we're here and why, you know, you and I sit here and there's solids and there's liquids and there's gases. And yet if we dial in the magnification enough. Basically, we're space. There's so much space that oh man, neutrinos that have mass but no charge, really rare subatomic particle that they're trying to figure out, I don't know, it's like 1 trillion of them will pass through us today.
I know, when I think of the fact that we're all made up of atoms, I don't think I can actually fathom what that.
Yeah. And then you go subatomic.
Yeah, I know.
Eventually you get down to neutrinos. There's a lab out in Canada at the base of Sudbury where they're trying to get pictures or somehow record vapor trails or something of neutrinos. Yeah.
I think as well, when you were talking about, I wouldn't say I'm religious either, but it's funny that I would have that same idea as like a creator in some capacity.
Yeah.
And maybe not like a written religion thing, but it's funny how in moments of like panic or dire need, even I would probably revert to like, please God, just fucking help me with whatever the thing. And you were talking there about the word of calling, which I've heard you say a few times, and you obviously got your first book was you made the title of that. How important do you think it's been for you to have a calling, and for people that don't have a calling, like how would you advise them to find one, if you think you could give them advice?
Well, I'd like to think that everyone has a calling, and I think it's believing in it and just dedicating time and discipline and energy to it. And, with mountaineering, the amount of energy and time you want to put, it'll take it all and ask for more.
Yeah.
And then, I also just had a thought about the asking God, one of the, greatest minds to understand the universe. And, we've gone past Albert Einstein now, but, a guy who probably, if there is a God, Einstein saw some of God's writing. And, he said, God does not play dice with the universe. So we don't understand it yet, but we're part of it, and it's getting bigger.
Yeah. I didn't actually realize when I was younger that Einstein was religious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I don't think I don't know why they would teach that specifically in school, but I remember hearing later on that he had, there's like a really famous quote that he said something about God as well. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
Because, I think in today's age, the idea is that like the smartest minds typically aren't religious because I don't know what they have, but it's quite cool to hear that he was.
Yeah.
Like he was really religious. And you were saying that your calling was climbing, but you've also done like quite a lot of other stuff. So I won't do everything, but like climbing, skiing, writing, speaking, you've obviously done some films. Out of all that, obviously you're saying climbing's your calling, but would you say what one was the most fulfilling to you, and why do you think that would be?
I think the most fulfilling at this point, looking back, would be the climbing. And my passion for alpinism, which largely was instilled in me by reading, especially Walter Bonatti and Lionel Terray, some of the great, writers about alpinism in the mountaineering canon, and some of the better writers about, and I could go through the list, and Tom Patey's on the list because he was a great comedic writer and a really great climber. And, it, gave me, a calling that I finally committed to, in 1980 in Chamonix after climbing the north face of Les Droits with my buddy Kevin Doyle from Calgary. I came down into this forest we were living in, and even though my native spirituality at that point wasn't as developed as it is now, I leaned against one of the ancestors, and in this case, that ancestor was a big tree close to where we had our tent, and I leaned my back onto it. And something I do a lot with trees now, find certain trees, and part of the indigenous worldview is that everything is alive, nothing is dead, nothing is inert, everything is alive, everything has a spirit. And that's a stepping stone and a challenge, because I was raised in Western Canada, and raised with some of the concepts of manifest destiny, and we're the shepherds of the earth, and but that's not the indigenous view. That these are all our relations, and we're all related, and these are our relations and our relatives. So yeah, I leaned against this big tree, and yeah, probably, I'm sure I felt some of the tree's energy, and okay, I'm going to be an alpinist. That's what I'm going to do. And I'd mentioned John Laughlin earlier, being embarrassed when he, had to leave the party, got the call from the Calgary rescue crew, and shows up, and, there he is. He's probably hungover. And I see him, and I said, "Oh man, John, and I knew him by name. I've never even met him, but at that point I'd seen his slideshows and read about his climbs in the newspaper and stuff, and go to any production they ever did, like slideshows or anything. But, I'm just, I was like, "I'm so sorry for having to be here," and he's like, "Oh, no, lad, it's fine."
He's probably been in that exact same boat.
Yeah,
I'd imagine.
Yeah. As you look back and you learn history of climbing, you realize, Laughlin, definitely had his moments.
Yeah.
But, that year in Chamonix, John Laughlin and Dwayne Congdon were representing the Rassemblement, which is sponsored by the French ENZA, and brings together young alpinists from all over the world to Chamonix to go climbing. And, I met first day there, I'm trying to find my buddy Kevin, and, I run into John and Dwayne running, in the hills above Chamonix. And, they're like, "Barry, what are you doing here?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm here to meet Kevin Doyle." And he said, "Yeah, his campsite's just over there." And I think it was John. "Yeah, I think he was at it longer in the Bar Nash last night than, anybody else was."
Yeah.
So, just telling me that Kevin's probably hungover.
I love it.
And later in that summer, or during the summer, I'd run into John around Chamonix, and they were there for 2 weeks or a month or something with their Rassemblement. And, as he always did, pretty classy guy. And the last night I saw him, was in a different bar in Chamonix. And, he and Dwayne had just, made the third ascent of the Colton McIntyre route on La Grande Jorras, which was, the ascent of the Rassemblement. The rest of the Europeans and stuff, this was the high water mark. And John was pretty, electric about this ascent. And, he's raving to me about this ascent, and his eyes were just so penetrating. He had big teardrop glasses, and he had these really great blue eyes. But, if he nailed his attention on you, it was like laser beams. And, I'm, listening to all this stuff. And then what happened? And then blah, blah, blah. He's describing the climb. And then, as I always did, he said, "What are you and Kevin up to?" And Kevin and I had been talking about La Droite, but I didn't want to, put it out there in the world in words, because then it would exist.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my feet, which is pretty Southern Albertan to do, and like shuffling my feet around. And I was like, we're kind of thinking of La Droite. And, John just went, do it, man. It's perfect for you guys. And I'm like, whoa, well, John, I don't know. It's a big route. It's 99 in the top 100 of Gaston Rebelfat's, 100 finest climbs in Mont Blanc, and Mesner soloed it in the 60s. And, it's a big route. And John just says, no, Dwayne and I did it early in the summer. It's perfect for you guys. John, it's big. He says, no, it's just, first you do the north face of Mount Athabasca, and you and Kevin have done that. Then you do Cascade Waterfall. You and Kevin have done that. Then you top it off with Takaka, and you and Kevin have done that. It's 3 pieces of Canada on loan to France. You can do it.
Wow.
And that really,
must give you some of it.
It made
confidence.
It's like, okay. Yeah. And Kevin and I went and did it and had this just amazing experience on this route. And I got my nose broken by a chunk of ice that Kevin dropped on me. But when I finally got up, it's your nose. So I really took a hit and broke my nose, and there's blood and all that kind of stuff. And, you can't see it because your nose. I don't have a mirror or anything. So you don't know how bad it is. And you're worried like, oh my God, am I going to be like hideously scarred? And I get up to Kevin and I'm looking for succor and, support. And I get up there and he goes, oh, Blanche, that doesn't look too good, man. So we put some steri strips on it.
Yeah. Well, I know people who have broken noses, and yours is very straight compared to theirs.
Yeah. It wasn't the first time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got a friend who has broken his nose multiple times, and it's gradually shifted to the other side of his face. It's not as straight as it used to be, but
yeah.
Do you think of, when you think back, of all the expeditions, of all the experiences, like that one you obviously just named, is there one that's the most memorable to you? And if so, is there a reason why it is?
Yeah, there is. There's a couple that jump into my mind that are most memorable, and one was an important ascent, and another was a important attempt, and maybe two that were really important ascents. One was in 1984 on the North Ridge of Rakaposhi in northern Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And, it was Kevin and David Cheeseman and myself who eventually were able to get to the top of this mountain, even though we had 4 other partners who eventually, because of, lack of time or lack of acclimatization, had to kind of bow out of the expedition. And then in 85, the next year, David Cheeseman and I did a route on the north face of North Twin, which is just right at the Columbia ice fields. Although, I've said it that I wanted to keep the fact that it's seen more by grizzlies than it is by humans. It's tough to get. You got to do a whole day to walk back there, or you go in a helicopter or something. But more grizzlies see North Twin still than humans see it. So that's a great deal. And, then 88, our attempt on, Nanga Parbat. And, the big thing about all those 3 ascents is the guys I was there with. And David Cheeseman, who, we lost on Mount Logan in 1987, which, I quit climbing for, 6 months, a year after David died. And then, Kevin, who was, on 2 of those, trips, the one to Nanga Parbat and the one to Rakaposhi. And then, Mark Twight and Ward Robinson. And Kevin, who was on the Nanga Parbat one. And it's mostly those, those connections to those guys. And the embarrassment that before David passed away in 87, I didn't have the wherewithal and the confidence to tell David that I loved him.
Yeah.
And that's so far in the past now. Kevin and I talk on the phone, every week, and, we never hang out without us telling each other we love each other. So pretty important.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I have that now with my own friends. But I would say, and this isn't for any reason apart from just maybe just the weird, so I could say it to my friends fairly easily, but I think I would still struggle, not because I don't mean it, but just because of the weird dynamic of a father and a son. I think sometimes I would still struggle to say, I have said it to him and he said it to me, so it's not like it's this like invisible thing that's never been said. But it's funny how like to my mates I could say it like no bother, but for whatever reason I still have this like childlike awkwardness in saying it to my dad. And I don't know why, because I think, you know, there will come days where I will wish I could, you know, and he's not here. And it's as simple. I mean, as I say, I've said it before. He's said it before. It's not like this weird unspoken thing, but I do wish I said it more. But I don't know why. It's like this awkwardness. But when David passed away, were you just like, screw this? If I think it, I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. Over some time after that, and you know, feeling David's spirit in the mountains, which I don't feel anymore. You know, I probably not a week goes by that I don't think about him, but I, you know, felt his presence in the mountains undeniably for several years after his passing. And kind of the same with another dear friend, Alex Lowe, who got killed on Shishipangma, actually. And although I felt Alex's presence for maybe a year after he got killed, David's was longer. And the fact that I don't feel them anymore, you know, in my mind, their souls have been recycled. They exist again as human beings somewhere. And I
think that you obviously know probably more than most, like the mountains are amazing, you know, and they give so much to you and experiences and lessons and stuff like that, but they can also take like so much away from you.
Yeah.
You know, you've obviously had personal experience. Like, how have you navigated like the beauty and the loss that they can give you and take away when you're in the mountains? Like, how'd you navigate that? How'd you live with that kind of life?
Yeah. Well, thinking of David, you know, I quit climbing, and, you know, a number of hard things happened within a year's kind of period of time, with, you know, death, 3 deaths being, you know, in a very short period of time, one of which was David's. And I was living in Calgary in an apartment, and I was writing a letter to David, and I was really concentrating on this letter, and the letter got published in the Canadian Alpine Journal. And I think I might have put it into the calling. I have to read my own book to remember. But anyways, I'm writing this letter. I'm super concentrated, and the radio's playing, but it's just white noise in the background. And, you know, I'm concentrating on my friend David. And then suddenly it leaps into my head that I hear Running on Empty by Jackson Browne, which was our battle cry song. You know, we would sing that song when we were out of food and, you know, out of fuel, you know, getting to Running on Empty. We would, you know, sing Running on Empty. And it just like, oh God, David, you're here. And that's the way you're communicating with me. And realizing soon after that if I had died, David would have kept climbing. And he would want me to keep climbing. So I started climbing again. And, you know, that decision is very personal, and it kind of, you know, ends somewhere around the skin level, and it's different for everybody. So I know other friends who've lost people in the mountains who have left their mountain experiences, and, you know, some maybe just don't go to the mountains. Some don't climb in the mountains or ski in the mountains anymore, all of which is, you know, that's fine. That's the way, you know, the cards fall for them, or the decisions they make. But, yeah, the mountains, we go there for the light. Light. Just had Einstein pop into my head again, because, his Nobel Prize was not for relativity or the special theory of relativity. It was for his work on electromagnetism and light. That's what he got his Nobel Prize for. So, and I think I'd have to look back, but trying to determine and define light as a particle or a wave. And, anyways, that's, that mind is a pretty unique mind. But, yeah.
And do you think did that experience lead to the creation of the Mount Muskox? Like, did you feel like something was missing? And can you actually tell me a little bit about Mount Muskox, what it is exactly you guys do?
Oh, yeah. My life experience is, helped create the mountain Muskox, and the way, a couple of the deaths back around the time of David's deaths, where two of my clients died under my care on a mountain called Mount Baker, which is at the Wapta ice field. So, that was some of the really hard parts of that year. And, in, one of the films that, Andy made called Spindrift, and honestly, if there was, if you could relive one part of 1 minute of your life, it'd be so easy for me to choose. That would be the minute that I decided to switch from a down climb to a lower. That would be the point in time. And that event with the death of David and, just some big challenges at that point, I was, really lucky to get, steered to a psychiatrist in Calgary who had been a climber earlier in his life. And I think he'd had a death on an expedition and kind of left climbing away, but a really great psychiatrist who I got to spend time with, working with him. And he helped me, understand that, accident and death, reframe it in a different way, which was just, it sounds simple, but, tragedy or an accident isn't an accident until something goes wrong, right? A lot of the time, and as a guide, we know that. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, had something shifted, it would be a tragedy, but it became normality or a success because of, you could call it grace or luck, whatever. I know, one of the times I got the worst form of avalanche hit me was in 1999 on Howe's Peak when, this tibia got broken by slamming into a rock while a big bunch of snow was coming down and trying to pummel me. It was pummeling me. But in that situation, literally, and you're talking about a corridor of ice that's, from here to the window over there. Yeah. Not even that. Maybe this side of the Christmas tree. And, there's 100-foot rock walls on other sides. So all of this bonded snow is getting concentrated in there. And if I'd have been standing 6 inches over there, I would have got flushed off the mountain. That material would have broken the ropes. It already ripped one ice screw out, slammed me into the rock wall. But the rock wall was put with a little bit of a bulge by my climbing partner. And those things we look for protection whenever we find anchorage. And, but, if Scotty had placed the anchor just a little bit higher and I was standing there, I would have got scraped off and that would have been it. And, it was such a violent hit that I thought I was getting scraped off. I had the physical illusion that I was, falling down the mountain. Wow. It took me 30 seconds to realize, oh no, I'm still getting beaten up and, pounded in this avalanche, but I'm still connected. So, yeah. So, I got to work with this psychiatrist, and then in 2016, we were on Robson, and I was guiding a guy who's a very close friend, a buddy, and he was, also with another client of mine, and we're trying to climb the Emperor Ridge of Mount Robson, which is a pretty big rig. And, yeah, we've decided to call it largely on my judgment that, we've been 4 days on this thing and we still got, a kilometer of gargoyles to go through. And I think we should go down, I think that's the best option here because the gargoyles are falling apart and blah, blah, blah. There's reasons. So we start on the descent and, we're doing a lot of down climbing and stuff and, going towards Kinney Lake. So eventually we're going to end up on the Fan Glacier. But we have to do a rappel at one point, and we've been doing all this traversing to down climb and stuff. But we do this short rappel. I do the rappel, and as my buddy's coming down, he's on rappel when the anchor, which was a rope around a boulder, failed, and he came crashing down. And I remember running towards him to try to catch him as this, relatively big guy is going down this rock face, and there's spikes below and stuff. So it could have been a terrible, he had 2 kids. I got 2 kids, and the daughters, it's 4 daughters. They all get along like a house on fire every year. Before I go see my mom, we go to see my mom in Indian Head, Saskatchewan, where she now lives, which is where my grandfather moved the family from the Qu'Appelle, Katepwa to Indian Head after the war. Yeah, I see this guy coming down and, he stops and, the rope's tangled up and the other client's still on top, and Scotty's, he fractured his ankle, and, and he's a firefighter, so he knows the seriousness of his injuries. And I do too. And we decide to leave the ankle inside the climbing boot to support it.
Yeah.
But before we went to Robson, he said one of his ambitions was to lose some weight on Robson. So I'm exposing, the rest of them. He's got, a complaint here. And I can't remember if I cut his pants or whatever. I think I did. But the largest avulsion I've ever seen is on his thigh here. Mm. It's the size of your hand. And it's completely, as I cut the pants away, you can see the skin is gone. And, he's smart enough. He's like, is it still attached? You can find the skin. Is it still attached? And, I go, okay, yeah, it's still attached. So I know what I got to do. I've got to lay it down. I've got to wrap it in gauze and protect it. And eventually, the plastic surgeon stitched him up there.
Wow.
But, as I'm doing that, and, I've been in tears because it's like, holy fuck, either you or I could have left a couple girls, either you or me, because I rapped first. We could have left 2 daughters without dads. I'm like, holy fuck. And, climbing's one thing, but not being there for your kids, that's totally different level. So, but as this avulsion, is exposed, underneath it is all this, subcutaneous fat tissue, and it looks like cottage cheese that's not white but yellow.
Yeah.
And I say to Scotty, some of it's sticking on his leg. I looked and I say, Scotty, look, you lost some weight. And he started to laugh. So I said, okay, he's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a helicopter rescue and stuff. So as part of that, fairly traumatic guiding event, our company, I was in to see a psychologist the next day. Mm-hmm. My company set it up for me, as does our Guides Association, whenever these types of serious incidents happen, incidents or accidents. And, I got to see Janet McLeod, who, eventually her office was right next door to ours. But initially I talked to her over Zoom because she was out on the coast. And, I started seeing Janet, and, who still, is with Mountain Therapy here in Canmore. And, at one of the times I was seeing Janet, she said, I've got another client who has to, leave the room. And, this person, is it okay? I said, yeah, I'm sure it is. And, out comes my buddy, Todd Gwynn. And, we've been mountain guides forever. Todd and I have known each other for a really long time. And he's just left his position as the public safety guy with CMH, Canadian Mountain Holidays, just because he'd seen too much. And that's what he is seeing Janet about. And, Todd and I just thought, oh man, brother, give each other a big hug and hold it for a while. And Janet sees that, and she also is dealing with, seeing Sarah Hunican, who had a avalanche fatality, on one of her guiding trips on Mount Field. Not Mount Field. Is it Mount Field? No, it's Mount Stephen. Right above the town of Field. And, Janet, just gets asked the three of us if we want to meet as a group. And so the Mountain Muskox, what eventually became the Mountain Muskox, just started with Janet and Sarah and Todd and I sitting down, and just every 2 weeks, just sitting for 3 hours and talking. And it really helped. And kind of Janet suspected this was going to help, and she was right. So, I think the second time around of that, or third time around, Kevin Hadjertis joined us. And, we've, decided, this really works. How can we make this more available to the community? And that's where we came up with the idea of Muskox, because Muskox are it's a defensive positioning where all the adults surround the infants or the young, and they protect in a circle. And, we like that patterning, but we made the distinction that in the Muskox circles, Mount Muskox circles, we don't face out from each other, we face in. So our circles, we decided if we could have, 12 participants, as many as 12, and then a couple facilitators, a male and a female. And we ran it like that for a while, and it just worked. And we started the Bow Valley Muskox Circle, and it's grown from there. And I think it's like 5 years now, maybe 6. So I just got to look back on dates and stuff. But I've missed some of the Bow Valley meetings, but say if we've had, 30 meetings, I've been at 25 of them. Mm. So, yeah. So is it like a regular meeting where everyone will get together? It's not like you reach out and you have like a one-on-one therapy thing. It's more it's always a Muskox Circle. And is it like every month or something? Or is it once a month. Okay, right. Yeah. And there's different, Muskox circles, there's one at the Sea to Sky Highway. I think there's one in Golden. There's one, down in, Nelson. And I think they had one in Revelstoke for a while. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to fire that up again. And we're looking at, possibly one down in, Montana, the place where a river runs through it is written about. And it's not Kalispell, and it's not Bozeman. It's, Missoula. Yeah. Do you journal? Like, do you write in like a diary or anything? A lot of the time, yeah. Yeah. So, when I decided that, I would be an alpinist, the backtrack to that was reading anything to do with climbing, which, really started to ignite a passion in me for reading, but also for writing. And, that same trip in 1980 that Kevin and I were, we climbed all over the Alps, and then we, had, train passes. So we went down, first of all, before we used our train passes, or they became effective or something, we hitchhiked down to the Verdon Gorge and climbed in the Verdon Gorge. And then we also, went down to the Calanque, right on the Mediterranean, where there's really great rock climbing. And, Royal Robbins did a traverse, and the Calanques that, the Robbins traverse, a lot of climbers have come out of that part of the Mediterranean, and there's even more rock climbing. They develop there all the time. But we went down and we were on a bus. We'd taken the train through Italy, and then we got on a ship to go over to get to Corfu. And we're on Corfu Island, and we were taking a bus or something, and we get off the bus, and I'd left my Stephen King novel that I hadn't finished in the back of the thing of the bus, and the bus drove away, and I took it as a sign. So I quit reading Robert Ludlum and Stephen King. Yeah. The next, I said, okay, I gotta change my reading.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had read some Hemingway. But the next one I read was Henry Miller, Tropic of Capricorn. Mm. And, I just started reading, Hemingway got a Nobel for his writing. I don't think Henry Miller did, but, I started, my reading changed. And, I ended up reading everything Hemingway, even the posthumous stuff that Hemingway's written. Mm. And, kind of raised a passion in me that had been there since around that time that I want to write at some point. So I had even started journaling my daily climbing adventures. Yeah. A lot of which were on Yamnuska, actually, or Yamanuska. So with Kevin and with some of the other buddies we climbed with at that time. So I wrote a lot about that, and, wrote a lot in magazines initially, and then helped with compilations of climbing books, contributed chapters and stuff. And then eventually, finally, after a number of attempts of trying to write a book about climbing, I finally got The Calling. And the genesis for The Calling, the first couple chapters were written at the Banff Mountain Writers Workshop in 2009. Mm-hmm. And, one of my fellow, members of the mountain writing workshop at that event was Bernadette MacDonald, who's written, I don't know how many books Bernadette's written now. She's written a number of books. She's retired now. Tells me she's not writing anymore. But, she's won a couple Boardman Tasker Awards, I think, for her, largely writing about Eastern European climbers. And, I even suggested to her at one point that she should write something about Wojtek Kurtyka. And I said, and Wojtek's writing itself is phenomenal writing. And, my thing to her was that, Wojtek's kind of a mystic alpinist. If you had an alpinist that you would classify as mystic and mystical, Wojtek, that'd be number one. So she did write a book about Wojtek. Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, because I find, I journal, and I find it can be quite it sometimes helps me to get my thoughts into a more cohesive idea. Mm-hmm. And you obviously mentioned you've wrote a book. Did you find it was quite cathartic to write through, to kind of look back in your life with The Calling and sit down and write it? Did it change your perspective at all and stuff that you had done? The process of writing it, did it kind of change it at all?
Well, it's such a different process. And, Hemingway said it, I think in his Nobel address, that, writers, they're alone and they're individual, and they're, off someplace removed from the rest of the world, right? So it's a different, way of being in the world. And I did, before the age of 33, I did a lot of soloing as an alpinist and a climber. But otherwise, it's always out with partnerships and other people. So I didn't, spend a tremendous amount of time by myself. Mm-hmm. And writing, that's what it is. You're by yourself. The cat come and try to walk over your stuff or stuff like that. But otherwise, and it's largely sedentary. And, I took advice from Hemingway, and I just went back to that advice 2 days ago because I got to write a thing for the Echo a profile or an introduction to the next book, which is called The Echo, and it's getting published right now. I went back to Hemingway's advice, and that's something I used initially in my writing, but I had to migrate away from to become more productive. And what was Hemingway's advice? It was write longhand with a pencil while standing.
Oh, really?
You're a little bit more physically, you're not sedentary, you're up, you're moving around. And there's something about the connection with the mind to the hand that is far different than the connection to the mind to the keyboard.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're dragging, I even heard Kipling's writing described like that. Someone was describing Kipling's writing and presenting to someone else as, how you should read Kipling or, talk Kipling, like read his writing. Think about the pen slowly dragging over the paper. It's not fast. And there's periods, and the periods mean something. So, yeah.
I definitely think, I actually do that, but I never really thought why. I just had this like innate feeling that I preferred writing, like obviously notes for this. Like I write everything out as opposed to typing it, just because I find like when I write it, I connect with it more and I remember it more, especially with stuff like this. Obviously, I want to remember stuff, but I feel like you definitely connect with it more when you write it than I could type all this out and I guarantee you it wouldn't have the same, as you were saying, kind of mind-body connection with.
Yeah. And really good writers will, I forget which one who pointed out to his buddy, he looked at the thing that he sent him and said, this was made with a text composer, wasn't it? Which is like a keyboard. Yeah, you made this with a text composer. And that's eventually the step I did make. And Hemingway's other advice is, you write it longhand with a pencil standing. And, you might find that having your foot up on something, so I'd often have something to put my foot on. And, candle is good because that's a source of light. And Einstein would tell you the importance of light. But anyways, then the next day you edit it at a typewriter. That's what Hemingway would do. So I started that. I'd be writing longhand and I'd sit down at the computer and edit it, or even edit it with a pencil. And, with magazine writing, that was okay because 4,000 words or whatever. And I would always start at the very first word. And so that by the time you get to like a big chapter, which may be, 20,000 words or something, which is too long for a chapter, but I've written them. The quality of the front half of the chapter is so superior to the back half of the chapter because you start at the very first letter and you make changes every time. So I had to start, saying, those 4,000 words, I got to start, 4,000. This is where I need to start tomorrow. Yeah. The other ones are done. I got to concentrate on these ones. So But eventually, writing, the calling, some of it was done on the computer with the keyboard. Is that true? Maybe not. I think I might have. Yeah. I've got all the notebooks, so I should look back.
Yeah. It's really cool. Like I've journaled for like, maybe like 8 or 9 years now. And I find, I don't know if you had this, but it's funny when I first started it, I was very matter of fact in it. So if I say we did this, I'd be like, met Barry sat down for talk. Or I was actually traveling at the time, so I was in Asia. So I was like, went to temple, and then as time has gone on,
rice again.
Yeah. But as time has gone on,
don't they make any haggis in this country?
Yeah, God, I know. But it's definitely changed. Like now, it's a lot more emotive in it. Like I'll actually write and talk as if it's almost like a kind of therapy thing where I'll. And it's funny because I think at the beginning I almost had this weird worry that what happens if someone read this and judged me on what I was writing. But I mean, it's ultimately, I mean, you're writing books to be read, but with journals and stuff like that, it was kind of funny. Yeah. And then I think eventually once I got into the spirit of it, I was like, nah, like, use it for the purpose that you're trying to understand things, and I think the amount of times I've had a thought in my head and I've written it down And it's almost like, again, that process of writing it down just like clarifies it for whatever reason. You know, I've been thinking about it all day, and I haven't had a new thought, but just the process of writing it down, whether it's, I don't know why it seems to have this.
Yeah. Well, if you just go not even deep, but lightly into, neuropsychology, you'll find out pretty quick that that connection is different than this connection.
And have you found, because obviously you had like quite a significant injury recently with your head, have you found that like writing, has that helped? Like the rebuilding, I don't know if that's the right term to use, but
it helped, and it helped with my friend who edited the Echo, Virginia, because I was a little, intimidated about starting writing again. And I haven't done a bunch since my head injury. And because, it's not the same, I'm not the same. And I didn't know what my voice would be. And Virginia was pretty good. She said, "This is your new voice. This is your new writing style." And
you said you're almost
be different, but it is just a new style.
Yeah, you were saying on a previous thing, you're almost at like a new normal.
Yeah.
Like
a new normal is fine, because the type of head injury that I had, like I had 11 skull fractures, and 4 of them quite life-threatening, that got resolved pretty quick, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And resolved by the body, actually, without, someone drilling into my head to release pressure and stuff like that, which has complications. My buddy Scott, who had the accident on Robson, he was right there. He saw me fall. I pushed him out of the way and I fell by him, and he kind of knew, kind of at first glance, that I probably already had the orbital fracture as I went by him. And then, by the time I hit the ground, I was starting to go unconscious, and already blood and cerebroplasmal stuff coming out of my ear. He knew how much trouble he was in, and he shouted up to his wife to get an ambulance. And she's now the chief of police in the Regina Police Force, first woman in Saskatchewan history to be chief of police.
Nice.
And she just got appointed that a month ago. So pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah. But she knew what to do to get an ambulance together.
Come to my house immediately.
Yeah. But Scotty, it took him a year to share with me, because it's a traumatic event for him.
Yeah.
Kind of like me seeing him fall. And, he's looking, and he knows that the type of injury I have, he's, as a firefighter, that was the second worst head injury. Mine was the second worst, or, equal to the 2 worst he's seen, and the other person died. So, the new normal is fantastic, and I've got absolutely nothing to complain about, because, death was there, and, it's been there too many times in my life, mostly during climbing.
Yeah, nature of the beast, I guess.
Yeah.
And do you think, you've had so many different intersections in your life with like, just different things that you've done. Like, do you feel like throughout your life, you've had somewhat of a guiding principle that's kind of helped you make decisions, or like, how have you known that you're on the right path? Like, without, using just an external reference of like recognition or achievement, like what's been your like internal, I know that I'm doing the right thing here, if you have one?
Yeah, well, certainly, like the climbing, just such an overwhelming passion that, and to put it into some kind of perspective, is that, some of the things that I wanted to do, and that were on my list of things that I wanted to do in the Rockies, just the chance of missing out, like the ascent on Robson that we did, initially my buddy Eric Dumarak got a hold of me and said, Philippe and I knew Philippe at that point. We'd climbed together, and he's from Briançon, France, another mountain guide. We're going to go to Robson. And initially I said to him, oh man, I'm just too busy. I've got all this stuff booked, mostly guiding. But then, after hanging up, the passion comes, and it's like, I can't miss this. I tried it, a dozen times trying to get this route on this mountain established. And, from 89 to 2002, numerous attempts. And it's just like, fuck, I can't miss this. No, I gotta be there. So yeah, that passion and, calling.
Just a love for an innate feeling of like loving what you're doing, really.
Yeah. Loving, but the whole experience, right from, one of the great things about mountains is, I kind of step out of the car and I'm starting to experience the things I love about climbing. Mm-hmm. Some of that is walking through the forest and seeing those ancestors and being close to those ancestors before going higher and getting connected to different ancestors. Mm-hmm. And, but on the same side of things, have I been doing the right thing all the time? No, I've had 2 divorces. So, there was, decisions that I made that were not good. So yeah.
I guess it's when you make
human being.
Yeah. I mean, if life is perfect to be easy, but it's almost,
perfection. That's for gods. Yeah. That's not for humans.
Not for us mere
mortals. Gods get perfection. Humans don't get perfection.
I almost feel like if you have the right mentality as well, which I no doubt think you do, like the mistakes that you make, those are actually sometimes the biggest lessons in your life that help you to grow into someone who makes, in the future better decisions or different decisions that, like I was listening to a thing the other day that was talking about how most people are shaped by fairly traumatic events, as you've kind of alluded to. And the question the guy was asking was, knowing how much you've grown and changed and become the person you want to be because of that event that happened, would you ever go back to stop it from happening? I know there's obviously some situations.
Yeah.
You obviously would. You were alluding to one earlier. But, something that's perhaps not like a life-threatening thing. He was like, would you want to change that? Because ultimately it made you who you were, Yeah. If it obviously doesn't have effects on other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Nanga Parbat, we were really close to getting to the top, and it would have been great to get to the top. As Mark said, we would have got shaving commercials and cars and chicks and stuff.
You didn't get that anyway, no?
But, the attempt on Nanga Parbat is one of the most treasured experiences that I've had in the mountains. And once again, because of the guys I was there with.
Yeah.
And when I had my head injury, those guys all live in vastly different areas. Now, like Kevin's in Calgary, but Ward's out on the, coast in Squamish and even, out, on Vancouver Island some of the time. And Mark's down in Salt Lake City and Bozeman. And they all showed up just to see if I was okay, as did some of my other really, dear friends. So.
And that's because of the connections you made, on those memorable trips that you talked about. They last span a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love those guys.
Yeah.
And, they love me. So
I always thought it was really
to make sure I was okay.
Yeah.
They had to come and see me.
Yeah.
To see and physically touch me to see that I was okay.
Yeah. I think it's the same. Like my family's obviously all in Scotland just now. And I do think that if something was to happen, like I'm always like, I would fly. And it's funny because I could, something happens to my sister, mom and dad, I could speak to them on the phone but there's a different, I would feel the need to be there, for that physical.
Yeah. No, it's, it's the difference between, motion picture and live theater. Like this is live theater. And as soon as we, record it and project it, you become 2-dimensional. You're not 3-dimensional anymore.
Yeah.
So, you become more 2-dimensional when you turn sideways and stuff. But, right now, that's one of the things I don't get to see a lot of live theater, but I really do. If any Sam Shepard play is produced anywhere in Alberta, I'll go there.
Yeah.
Because Sam is one of the other guys I started reading.
Mm-hmm.
And he's mostly known as a playwright. And probably more popular now. He's passed on from ALS, but more known as an actor. His first acting gig was here in Southern Alberta, actually, with Richard Gere. I think it was Days of Heaven. And the director's quite well known too. And, anyways, but,
so when you look back on, like your kind of career, is there any lessons that you learned that you would like to give to your younger self if you could?
That one decision, I would try to make that decision different. But the lessons, I think it's good. And, I came into climbing in a time before climbing gyms existed and sport climbing didn't exist. And I had to learn pretty much from day one to be the leader. Because, Wasatch Slabs with my buddy. I finally got out on rock with my buddy because he'd taken a weekend course. And I had my experience from cadets and everything I'd learned in the basement and around the buildings of Calgary. And his brother was a climber, so he had a rope and a rack that we could use. My buddy went up and after about 25 feet became a temporary,
me, probably.
deal. And it was dearly concerned for his life.
Yeah.
And he got the rope around a tree and lowered down. And I said, let me try. And it took me like an hour, but I got up the pitch and learned a ton, just getting up that pitch and putting in gear. And it was a slow progression. So it took a couple years before finally, accomplishing red shirt. It's one of the classic Brian Greenwood routes on Mount Yamanutka. And then meeting Kevin and getting things accelerated. But it was a good ability to know when I could fall and learning to, over time, get fear to be an ally. That fear, if it leads to panic, you're going to fall off and you're going to lose control. But fear is just demanding, some security. It's saying, okay, the body needs to be more secure. You need to come up with something because what you're doing at this moment isn't working. So you're going to have to do something else. You're going to have to find a different hold. You're going to have to down climb. You're going to have to get in more equipment. You're going to have to make a change. So you got to perform. It's a way to increase, that's the way I performed mostly in climbing, and people are, often, you're surprised to learn that I'm afraid a lot of the time when I'm climbing. I say, yeah, that's why I'm a climber. And that's why I'm still a climber. Without fear, as a climber, you wouldn't last a day if you didn't have any fear. Yeah, even before Einstein, gravity was identified as a law. It's not an opinion. It is a universal law. So in our part of the ball, 9.8 seconds per meter per second. That's going to happen.
I mean, you say you feel like you need to have fear as a climber. Do you just mean as in because why do you mean that? Like what?
Well, without fear, you'd just fall.
Right, okay.
You wouldn't have any term of consequence. And you need fear to tell you, you become more of you interpret your fear. And sometimes your fear can be breathtaking. Those are the types of situations. And I've been in several of them. I would never leave the ground knowing I would get into that situation. And the situation is if you fall, you die. And you know that. And, time is ticking. Your fingers are fading. So you're going to have to come up with something. And even without the lethal fear, which could take your breath away, it's often starting to be intuitive. So often, think of a wolf, moving through the forest, aware of everything, all of its relations, and looking for certain opportunities, but so aware of everything that's around it. And that's what, climber and alpinist experiences. It's a different forest. It's vertical or overhanging or, off vertical or whatever. And it's ice, rock, and snow. But eventually you're going with intuition. And yeah.
So it might sound like learn by doing. Just get out there and do the thing, don't.
Yeah. And look back historically, like our species, how long have we have language? That's a good thing to ask. And I don't know if anyone has a definition of when humans attained language, but before that is subconscious, and it's been with us since we've been an amoeba, basically. Subconscious is the real long thing. And when you're getting intuitive, you're tapping into your subconscious. And yeah. And the subconscious is Cormac McCarthy pointed this out. It's just for you. Its function is to keep you alive. That's what subconscious does.
And do you think like your subconscious, like when people talk about their gut feeling, do you think that's your subconscious as well?
Yeah. Man, gut's a good way to, and we learn more about the gut all the time.
Yeah.
We learn a lot more about the heart. And we know a fair amount about the head, but we learn incredibly more about the whole system. And, always think, God, if you were a neutrino, one way that neutrino was related over the CBC as someone who's talking about this research trying to track neutrinos is that one way to think about it is our solar system. The amount of space that exists in our solar system for a comet is about the same as the amount of space that exists in your body for a neutrino.
I can't grasp that.
I know. You got to be an astrophysicist. But yeah, there's people out there who study that stuff.
Who understand that,
yeah.
And then speaking of kind of high achievements, you recently got the Order of Canada.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
Oh God.
Do you feel like your friend, because I obviously we've got mutual friend Andy, and he was telling me it was about a 4-year process of them kind of sneaking around.
Yeah, and every so often, Andy might drop a hint that I never clued into.
Yeah.
And he'd say, oh, you should get the Order of Canada or something. I mean, like, yeah, when they start giving it to alpinists, I wouldn't, Andy, I wouldn't sit on the edge, don't sit on your thumbs or hold your breath for the Order of Canada. I don't think it's in the cards. And, then, I got a email about a year ago, in October. And it was from the Governor General's office. And I had to look initially. I think, is this a scam? And then I looked at all of the dots and everything. I said, fuck, I think this is legitimate. So I get a hold of the Governor General's office and I end up, arranging a phone call. I'm talking to a young gal in Ottawa, Quebecois gal, Celine, actually. And she tells me over the phone, you've been appointed to the Order of Canada. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Oh my God, my heart's beating. And about 30 seconds later, I said to her, okay, now I'm crying.
Yeah.
And just so overwhelming and so amazing.
Do you think that, it's great. You've kind of gone from opposite extremes from the, your generations of back in the Métis and your ancestors to like modern day you getting the Order of Canada. Like that's quite the change in fortunes.
Yeah.
Is there any conflict in your mind between like getting such recognition for like the stuff that you've done and then kind of like your own background?
Well, there's the historic timeline that the Métis have been here longer than Canada has existed. So I'm, very, very proud to be a Canadian and very, very aware of the fact that just by a fluke of birth that I was born in Canada, that my consciousness came to being in Canada. Because there's so many other parts of the globe that if I had been born somewhere else, which is a fluke of birth, it'd be so much harder. So I'm very, very grateful and proud to be a Canadian, although at times I'm disgraced to be a Canadian. And, when the information about the kids being buried at residential schools, I was embarrassed to be a Canadian. And it's a complex relationship, but mostly I'm proud to be a Canadian.
Yeah, definitely.
And
it's an amazing place.
Yeah. As proud as Stompin' Tom Connors. I always called a proud Canadian.
Yeah. I was thinking as well because the Order of Canada, to equate it, because I'm from the UK, it's like a knighthood, effectively. Is that right in saying it's kind of similar? Because I was thinking to myself,
I think there's, I'd have to look into the British system, but I think there's right now it would be the King's Awards.
Yeah.
And then the knightship the letter I got from the Governor General, who is the King's representative in Canada, Mary Symes, and it's the Department of Heraldry. So in Britain, there's way more heraldry. Like you all have duchesses and dukes and princesses. Like it's
layers.
And then, one of the guys I've climbed with here in Canmore for the BBC, Sir Christian John Bonington, who is a Knight of the Garda. So the Garda is even an elevated, there's only, I think, 12 Knights of the Garda.
Oh, wow.
And, I even had to look into that history, but then there's other knighthoodships. And even in the Order of Canada, I'm a companion of the Order of Canada. Then there's an officer of the Order of Canada, and there's one in the Bow Valley, Becky. Oh man, she's a cross-country skier. She got a gold after it was found out that the Italian and the Russian cheated. And of course I can see, Becky's face, but can I get her last name at my fingertips right now? Becky Scott. Becky Scott. She's officer of the Order of Canada. And then there's one level above that is a companion of the Order of Canada, which is the highest. And it's a civilian award. So there's different awards for military and, different parts of Canada, but that's the highest civilian awards. So it's pretty amazing. And as my friend Chick Scott, who was made a member of the Order of Canada at the same time as myself, pointed out that, we've gotten other stuff from like the Alpine Club of Canada, the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides that really are great and important to us. But this one's from the country. Yeah. This is the country of Canada. So this is the whole thing. So yeah. I'm very proud to be a member of the Order of Canada and to be a Canadian. But I'm also historically and back in time, also very proud of being Métis. And then Alberta comes last. Alberta became a province in 1904. So that's my third level of allegiance.
And you haven't asked anyone to call you Sir Barry Blanchard?
No, a lot of my friends joke.
You could. I think people would do it.
Should I bow? And I tell my buddies, like, no, you got to curtsy.
Yeah. I honestly think that if you said to some people that they would probably do it.
I like to see them curtsy instead.
And now, so I remember you were chatting again in a previous podcast about the quarters of your life. So you're in the third quarter just now.
I'm in the fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
So in this quarter of life, what is it what makes you curious and excited now? Like looking forward, in this chapter, this quarter?
largely to watch my daughters, they're, my older daughter's just getting out of her first quarter. So a little bit more time, she'll be getting into her second quarter. And my youngest daughter is just in her first quarter. And the quarters are templated off of Canadian Football League, 4 quarters. The average, lifespan for the Canadian male is 82 and the Canadian female is 86. So my daughters have a little different quarters. And it's interesting. Why is that? And, one of the British gentlemen, Damon Morris, who wrote a book called The Naked Ape, I think he's an anthropologist, but he's done BBC presentations. And one of them is really interesting. He did one of the differences between men and women. He actually used rock climbing as one of his examples in this TV series that, the two sexes, joining in rock climbing, that the male's power in the upper body and the female's, lower center of gravity and focus on the feet. Like he knows what he's talking about, that, they come kind of more equivalent when they participate in rock climbing.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have some, I think inarguably when Lynn Hill did the first free ascent of the nose of El Capitan, she was the best climber on the planet. Male, female, take your pick. Yeah. At that day, she was the best rock climber on the planet. So pretty wild. But, Damon Morris points out that, he's just filming a family, and he's the thing that he points out is there's the grandfather reading the newspaper and there's the grandmother down on the floor playing with the kids. And that's why women live longer than men. They have more responsibility. They, have to be down there playing with the kids. So I want to be a dad who's still down playing with his kids at this point in my life. And
there's a book I read, and I think it's the world's longest longitudinal study. And I think that's like the span of time. So they started this study in New York somewhere. It's on happiness, and I'm going to butcher this, but they started it in the 1900s at some point. But anyway, they started with one generation of people, and if the descendants of that first person have agreed to keep doing the study, they've continued to study with them. Anyway, long story short, over this span of time, they found that the one thing that has, across genders, races, ethnicity, whatever you want to be, the one thing that they found was common to people having a long and happy life was connection. And obviously you're kind of saying there, like, mothers and their kids, like, having a connection with your kids, your family, like that was the one thing that they proved was common amongst everyone. And unfortunately, it's the people who were like isolated and alone, they usually actually either died early or just had a very unhappy life at the end of it.
Yeah. That's, the Muskox, with a very specific part of culture that has experienced trauma and loss in the mountains, trauma and or loss in the mountains. Yeah. Community and connection. So much about when we sit down and talk for a couple hours is community and connection. Yeah. And Muskox, people ask me at this point in time is, I get the worth question. I don't know if I like the worth question, but is it worth it? And my reply is, it's worth it. There's a couple people who come to mind who hadn't smiled in a fucking year. I hadn't seen them smile in a year, and I was there the first time they smiled. So that's worth it all.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think the, sitting down with people and having kind of those connections and long form communications, like, yes, second to none, really. Like what, just talking to someone can really help you do. And I think also having just people who love you and will listen to you. You know, it says a lot. Because I think a lot of people can sometimes, I mean, not that I've ever had anything major, but I think at various points in life I've probably felt quite lonely, and then I've just had one conversation with a friend or my family who are all incredibly supportive, and it just, you know, completely can shift.
Yeah. The speed bumps are coming.
Yeah.
You know, my buddy Kevin, he's fighting leukemia right now, so.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me too. But he's a fighter. I don't know anyone else who's been in as many fist fights as Kevin has. He's a scrapper.
Yeah.
He'll never back down.
Well, like, before I let you go, I got one last question, which is there anything that people never think to ask you that you wish that they did? Like a question.
Yeah, I gotta think about that. The one that jumps into my mind was on another podcast, and one that I asked at the Mountain Film Festival this year, actually, with a bunch of gals on a panel. One of whom was Lynn Hill. Gave a really good reply, actually. And that is, you know, how do you want to be remembered? And, on my podcast, when I was asked that, it was about, with a couple of mountain guys talking largely about climbing stuff. I said, yeah, this is real change from all the climbing talk, but I want to be remembered as a good father. That's what I want to be remembered as. And, yeah.
Well, I don't know you too well, but just chatting to you and knowing people around you, and, you know, you've obviously alluded to the fact that that's the most important thing to you. I think you must be, you know, if you're thinking that way, definitely. Yeah. But look, Barry, thank you so much for giving me your time. Like, I think,
no worries.
And also, you know, I think having someone like you in the community who is so highly regarded, being so open to speak about, you know, not just your career and the obvious highs of it, but, you know, the lows, and being honest, and, you know, starting something with Sarah and the other people you mentioned, the Mount Muskox, you know, I think that's an amazing thing that you've all done. So I just want to thank you for your continued support within the sphere you've built around you.
Yeah, you're welcome.